so something that I like to try to steer the conversation to is like, I guess a little bit of the logos, like what's common sense here? And does this make sense based on what you're saying? And also, there are a lot of times, there were so many times at Oxford where I would get in a debate, well, like a disagreement, but I didn't really have anything to say. Like I disagreed with them, but I didn't have a lot of evidence to back it up. So I was like, how do I do this? And I mean, in those situations, you just have to go back to the common sense, see if there's something that doesn't match up, and also start to find out if there's like an underlying reason why they're arguing for that. Because like I got into this nasty debate about whether God is a woman, and it was like everyone in the room against me, and it was really, yeah, exactly. And they were like, Ariana Grande thinks this, so yeah, and so then it was really rough. And but what I had to do is, I had some scriptures and stuff like that. But what I really try to do is see, why do they want to think God is a woman? Like, what is motivating that? And what I realized was that it's because they feel that women have been treated so unfairly, that women need a chance. And so showing that God is a woman is our chance to show that, God treats women like men. And like, the logic kind of makes sense, but it's also very skewed. There's just motivations behind it. They may not really even care for the topic at point, but it's the things that they feel like that argument is defending in their own lives. So almost like get underneath with that, and that's what Jesus did. Like he didn't. There's sometimes that someone asked him a question, like Jaden said, and it's like he ignored the question entirely because he saw why they were asking the question, and he just went straight for that. And so that takes a lot of practice, but I would encourage your friend to not get so too caught up in the argument, because there might be like deeper things like anger about their past or something that maybe you can't uncover right then, but it does help to know that there's motivation behind a certain argument or whatever.
She's definitely not someone to argue. Like she's very quiet. She's
right.
even quieter than I am.
Yeah.
But she's in zoology, so.
Oh wow.
She has her teacher blatantly said like, "Oh, Christianity's not real," and so she's like, it's different for her.
Yeah.
She's the only Christian.
Right. I would say that sometimes it's okay to be quiet because like no matter what you say, no one's going to really listen. Yeah. But if she feels that there might be students in the class that, based on questions she asks, that you could listen. Something I try to do in my biology class, I'm about to take another biology class, and something I want to do is like just ask a random question, like, so if this if this frog, at one point was a fish that slowly learned to, live on land, what would have caused, like, why would have been any reason for him to live on land if his life is now harder than it was? Like, why would that be an adaptation?
Just an actual question.
Yeah, just an ask a question. Like, I'm just curious.
Don't attack them and say that they're wrong. Just ask thought.
Because they might have a great answer for it, but they might also be like, I haven't really thought of that. Like, I'll have to think about that. And that could get their wheels going. So that, like Socrates did, it's them that reaches the conclusion. Something's screwy. Something's fishy about this. So
it doesn't catalog you as an enemy in that way.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So encourage her to do her own research, or just looking in the scriptures and just ask questions like that. That's a really good thing to do.
Josiah, it's because they hit a baseball.
They hit a baseball. I needed to go get it.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. I love that comment. Those comments in there are really fun.
And when you come back, you can tell us about molecular and cellular
Yeah,
biology.
guys, I'm doing cellular and molecular biology. I'm going to be in a 3-hour long lab on Tuesday mornings. So it's going to be fun. Yeah.
We have a question for you. We've been sort of talking about ethos, pathos, logos, like a lot, and which one of us focus more on logos and which one of us focus more on pathos. But we really don't understand ethos very much. You're just going to give us a brief little help. What's ethos?
Yeah, because it's not really a thing that comes out as different parts of your argument. It's what's kind of mixed in along the way. So ethos, I think of it kind of like the authority of why you're saying the things you do or where you're getting it from. Because there are, like I'm reading a book right now that he gets a lot of his evidence from actual history books and like people who speak and talk about history. But there are other people like, like people who write in theology, they just use experience as their evidence. And if I write like a college essay, I might bring in an example from my own life, but then I might bring in an example from history because people might think that's more credible. And then I might bring in an example from the Bible if it's like, a Christian college or something. So it's not so much what you say, but it's like what approach you take to say it. And so I think you can see that in like, the arguments you guys have, like where are you getting your examples from? Like why do you think you have a right to say this, So I don't know if that's fully it, but
That
maybe.
helps a lot.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, one more question.
Yes.
So have you ever written papers and you've like put biblical things in there?
Say again?
You've written papers before having put biblical things in them?
Oh, okay. I'd say I've written a lot of papers where I put biblical principles, but I have a tendency not to mention God or mention Jesus because my dad always says you can talk a lot about God and never say his name, because it's the principles. And like the book of Esther, it never says God in there, but it's all about God and how he works,
Well, and like Proverbs,
Right.
it's just principles,
Yeah.
cause and effect, that it doesn't really mention God, but you can still apply those to real life.
And I found that can really interest people more because when they hear the word God, sometimes that shuts them off. Like, oh, I'm not going to listen to this. This is just that Christian crap. And so, yeah, I try to bring in those principles, but trying to, I don't want to say disguise it, but that's kind of what you're doing. You're bringing it in a way that people might be more interested here. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Sorry, yeah, she's like, so since she's doing theology, she has to write a lot about like evolution and stuff. So she asked me like, should she put stuff in there about creation or like, cause like she didn't know like, she doesn't like, we don't, like if she was to be failed for it, but
Right.
she wrote, she got like an F on something because she put like a verse about creation, like she said, this is my opinion, and like not even as stating as a fact. And so she was like, ugh. So I was
Right.
like, I don't know.
Yeah,
So-
I mean,
You
in
have
class,
to pick your moments on it.
Yeah.
right. You mean there are a lot of professors, really sadly, that they just want you to say what they want to hear, and that's where I think American education has really gone down the toilet a little bit. But it doesn't mean there might be times when she does have an opportunity and there's openness for it, but sometimes you just have to say, this is what the textbook says, but then again, like maybe ask some questions. So like in your conclusion paragraph, like, so this, in summary, this is what we think we've learned, through all this, but, could there be things we have just assumed that we haven't really proven, or, I don't know. There are ways through the back door, I guess, but I think the best thing for her would be to just, every once in a while, just ask those questions in class. Like, there's one time that in history class we were talking about like the pyramids and how technologically advanced they were. So I just asked, why would those pyramids be so much more advanced than what we have if we're evolving and we're supposed to be getting smarter, And like, just ask that question and see where it goes. Like, he could be like, shut up, just move on. But maybe somebody in the class hears that. Wow.
Do you think it's like a sin, like, 'cause she really wants to work at the zoo, and like, if she's gonna be like, how like if you ask them, they'll tell you where they come from, or like explain the animals, like how they come to be, and she's really worried that like she probably can't like explain creation. Like, do you think that would be like for her to say this tiger came from a whatever monkey or bird or whatever they go. She's really worried about that, but that's definitely her passion is working
Right.
with animals, and so she's trying to figure out how to.
I mean,
You could just say like,
It's so stressful.
Yeah.
It's stressful for her.
everyone thinks that, I mean, it's the general opinion that it
Yeah,
came
yeah.
from here, but
I would want to start with like, so a lot of people think that it comes from this, and then just leave it at that. Like, like, thanks. What do you think? Or it could go.
It could be
there,
like
I don't know.
Socrates and ask a question back.
Right.
it's like, what do you think?
Like a little 4-year-old kid. So what do you think? So I don't know, but
Well, I think that's why we're studying this module 9 in biology. Just what is the general thought, and is there anything to back it up on it, and is it good science, right?
right.
So you might say, well, good scientists would do this, this, this. Great. Information.
One of the problems with the whole evolution thing is that they don't mention that there are other ideas. They don't even give airtime to the fact that there are people who believe there was a creator, not just Christians, other like Muslims believe that as well. But it's just not even accepted at all. There's no question.
Right.
So
It's
even if you just gave a little bit of time to the idea that there might be a question, like start off with, there are lots of ideas, but the one we're going to learn together is the idea of evolution. Like there's not even a choice.
Right.
Like, there's a hypothesis if, like, the world's flat. And if it had as little support as evolution does, it'd just be like, that's so stupid, why are we thinking that? But yet, it's established fact.
That way.
Well, and then they avoid the question, like Dr. Lyle was saying, if you ask a question,
Has like proof for it. They just,
like
It's
what's
just
the
a
proof
fact.
for
It's
evolution?
known.
It's
That's
just,
widely known.
Right.
Guys, isn't it supposed to not even be a theory?
no,
So yeah, what's the definition of a theory? How does it get to a
You
theory?
had to have
okay,
a
an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Not
It's
even-
supposed to
We
be
call the microevolution a theory.
And then macro was
macro
A
hypothesis.
separate.
yeah.
unconfirmed.
So is evolution just an idea? Because I thought you had to have like a certain amount of like evidence. That's
Right.
theory
I mean, there's not like a
formula.
formula for when it's, but yeah, I don't think.
95%.
Well,
Yeah.
but when does it become scientific law?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like,
After the theory has
It's just
proved,
like a long
Been
time.
tested
like,
for
yeah.
something.
I think
So
that was
has
Ray
it-
Weil's point.
So has it ever been disproved?
yeah.
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 It's like
But
if you find, I think he gives this example, like if you believe that a certain species has been extinct, and then you find one specimen of that, well, you're not just gonna say, oh, well, most of the evidence still says that it's extinct, so we're just gonna say it's extinct.
You just kill the
One
animal,
piece
it's like,
of
it's
evidence.
extinct.
Got it.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Once again, you would be the world's greatest hero and the world's greatest villain at the
Like when
same
you
time.
kill
Genocide with one stab. Oh, man. Goodness, yeah. But then, the other thing is that in Darwin's Origin of Species, I really want to read that, but apparently it uses the phrase "let us assume" like over 100 times.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's basing his entire hypothesis on assumptions.
Well, and like half of his book was explaining why all
All the
the holes
problems.
in it, everything
Yeah.
that's wrong that wouldn't work.
No one talks about that. I didn't know that. That he was like, yeah, it's really not.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what C.S. Lewis said about primary sources rather than secondary sources,
Mhm.
because unless you discover for yourself what this person says, you will listen to all the lies that this is a great theory, or I've read it myself, and here's what it says, unless you go back.
We should probably read the origins now.
I want to
We
read
can't
it.
be
Somebody-
like
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Right.
remember Madeline. She was like, so should I read The Origin of Species? She was like all into it. She kept asking Mrs. Faust and stuff.
That's true. I don't remember. I
It
don't
is-
remember why she did that.
It is pretty complicated language, which
Yeah.
he probably did that for a reason too, so that no one would understand it. It's like, oh, this is way too smart for me, it must be right,
Yeah.
Right. The authority.
Because he didn't understand genetics and everything. If he would have, he probably would have.
So that's what I thought was interesting in this module is that how big of a play the genetics was.
Yeah.
Like until genetics
Yeah.
was discovered, well maybe it could be true, but now,
Stuff your genetic code.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
just
the new,
poof.
the new science proves this is the new fancy,
Mhm.
pioneering science that we're just discovering and learning so much about, and already it
Mhm.
doesn't.
In the part of the end of the module where it said like, okay, now we've shown like the structural homology disproves it, molecular biology disproves it, the fossil record disproves it, the geological column is a little bit
Mhm.
so like why do so many people believe it?
Mhm.
Like, and then it showed the neo-Darwinism punctuated equilibrium.
Mhm.
That can be disproved. Like it still doesn't work even with their ways of like, oh, let's try and fix it. Like it still doesn't.
So that brings me back to, again, Defeating Darwinism that our siblings are reading right now. And would you two go back in your pile and grab it? Because it really talks about this, that it really, science has become a philosophy. So we were just talking about philosophy. And so it's really important to know that and the why they are coming at, with all of this. He says all the time in the biology book, if you choose to be on this side, you can find things for your evidence. If you choose to have this philosophy or worldview, which I want to keep talking about worldview. So if you have a humanistic worldview, you're going to try to feed that, right?
And at schools, like public schools, you're not supposed to teach from a certain worldview. It's supposed to be very open and just let
can you
each
do that?
child have their
But it's not.
what their
It's
family believes
some
and what they believe. But
Yeah.
they teach evolution as the only option for
Yeah, they should,
the
like,
origin
some
of
people say
everything.
this,
So that's
some
like
people
teaching
say
a
like-
religion.
Yeah.
Everyone says
Yeah.
that you want, except when it comes to evolution. You have to believe evolution.
Yeah.
It's like, they're so opposite, like, the whole thing about racism, it's like,
Yeah.
if you believe evolution, you shouldn't have a problem with the colonists coming in and taking over the Native American land, because the
Yeah,
colonists are so
survival of the
superior.
fittest. Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the
You
fittest.
shouldn't have any problem with all these people dying,
Yeah.
but.
And if you
So
believe
things
in evolution, then why would you be supporting LGBTQ? Because they're obviously not the fittest to reproduce.
Yeah, they're not
So-
gonna reproduce, so.
How? That's
I better
not
stop
gonna work
recording.
out
We
well.
probably can't talk about this.
So don't let the CIA find out about
Oh,
You gotta hack your phone. Take it.
Yeah.
Like, it's so opposite, because it's like, you don't support the way you were born. Like,
Right.